Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
I'm Brittany Pacheco.
Tristan Jones.
Marcy Gonzalez.
And Luna, who's joining us in the background. And we are the Watchers in the Basement.
Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement today. Today we are here to discuss the 8th episode of the HBO series The Last of Us. The title of the episode is When We Are in Need. So before we unpack the episode, let's do like always, go around the room, get our overall thoughts of the episode. We'll start with you, Brittany. What did you think about this episode?
Man, if you can't hear Luna in the background, I apologize. She's on alert, y'all. She's embracing her inner Ellie, which I think is so appropriate because god damn, this episode. I think this jumped to probably be my new favorite episode. You know, and I feel like I've said this like 3 times already for the series, but man, this episode was on a different level. It was very Ellie focused, but we saw a level of ferocity that I wasn't anticipating seeing this, like not this soon or at all. But I feel for her. I was getting mad as hell during what was happening throughout this episode. I appreciated her level of badassness, but my heart also broke for her at the very end because I don't know if she'll be able to recover from this particular experience with this this quote unquote supportive group that she spent a short amount of time with. Overall, this episode was just incredible. All the feelings. Pedro Pascal also had a great performance. The last scene is what absolutely broke me as a human being, but we'll definitely talk more about that when we cross it. Tristan, I want to hear your thoughts, sir, because you're a huge fan of this game. You brought this show into our lives. Like
I did. I would like to collect commissions, all of the above.
Oh my goodness.
First a story. In October 2021. I told the world, I broadcast this on social media. I said, hey, the Golden State Warriors are going to win the 2021-2022 NBA championship. Book it.
Check.
In October 2022, I told the world, hey, the Houston Astros, they're going to win this in 6. I'm going to tell you exactly how this is going to go. They're going to lose the first game, they're going to win the next game. I told the world, I told the world The Last of Us was going to be one of those shows, right? I told it it's going to break records. It's going to be one of those shows that gets you emotionally, it gets you the action, the storytelling, the writing, everything. This episode kind of cemented for me because I absolutely know that they're going to stick the landing on this finale. This is one of the most prolific opening seasons in television history. Right, I think it's done everything possible to warrant like that level of praise. Like we've already had 3 classic episodes just off top. I mean like capital C classic, right? And then we just have everything after that is just really, really, really good hours of television. Like there's about 3 or 4 episodes that I could argue are my favorite of this season, legitimately. But again, we know what HBO does with penultimate episodes. This one just continues the lineage that we have, like all the Game of Thrones penultimates, the Sopranos penultimates, the Wire penultimates. Like it deserves to be amongst that lore with those elite television programs. Suffice to say, I love this episode. Already watched it twice. I didn't have a chance to take notes, but I'm gonna rock out regardless. I know. My kids were testing today, so I had no
understood.
But I definitely got that rewatch in. I don't care what's happening.
And I will attest to Tristan's Nostradamus, as I like to call him now. The man does not lead us astray. Marcy, has he led you astray?
No.
I would never. No. I value y'all too much.
Is Tristan our David, or what's going on here?
No. Oh my God! Bite your tongue, or I'm gonna break your finger. Just saying.
Yeah.
So, Marcy, what are your thoughts on the episode?
I am so glad I listened to Tristan and gave the show a chance. I was like Brittany, I was like, zombie show's not really my jam. Like the first episode, I was just kind of very iffy about it. And Tristan told us, he was like, nope, just keep watching. It's going to get better. Like, I promise. So second episode, I was like, okay, like, yes, it got better. Episode 3, which we know is awesome. That like made me a fan. So Tristan, thank you for, for, talking some sense into us. This was a great episode. It had everything. It had action, which some people online say like some of the past episodes haven't had enough action for them. So I think this had a good amount of action. It was violent, which I tend to again look away when something's too violent, but this was like Ellie is a badass type of violence. Was like, no, like I have to watch this. It was great. And like you, Brittany, that scene at the end, oh my gosh. Yes, that got me. So nope, great episode.
And to be clear, when I made the prediction, when I was kind of hyping up this episode, I'm basing it off, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later as we normally do. Like I'm basing this off the adaptation from the game, and there's way more action in this particular section of the game. So I thought it was going to be like a full on Call of Duty episode, right. And they adapted it perfectly for television. But I was expecting 10 times more action than we got, and they still stuck the landing on it. So beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, like Tristan was saying, like this to me, this was like a classic penultimate episode for an HBO show. We saw it with Game of Thrones, like season 3 of Game of Thrones. The Red Wedding was the second to last episode. Obviously, the first season of Game of Thrones. Not that I want to spoil Game of Thrones, but there's a big character death in the first season, the 9th episode. So this was along the same lines as those shows, and with that, you have with Ellie, I think you have like it's kind of a character defining episode, or certainly a character defining moment at the end of this episode. And she chose violence, and like I liked it. I thought it was great. Like
she channeled her inner Cersei. Like that's
right.
what's up.
No, it was
you go, Lyanna Mormont. You go, girl.
Yes.
I mean, when she's killing David with that knife, man, she is going for it. And I can't say I blame her. I mean, she was in an awful situation. We'll get into that though. So, but to start off with, I want to talk about. So we're going to focus a lot on Ellie, as we should. This was a very Ellie focused episode. But I want to talk about the 2 new characters we meet in this episode. We meet a character named David, who is kind of presented to us as like kind of a good guy, and he's a school teacher turned preacher, and he's the leader of this group that's, I mean, it's a religious cult, right? And then his right-hand man is this guy named James, who is played by Troy Baker, who of course is the voice of Joel from the video game series. He's also the host of the companion podcast. So it's very exciting for him to, for someone like him who's more involved in this story. This has been a huge part of his life. So for him to get to be a part of the live action interpretation, I think that's a really cool moment. But back to David, who's the leader of this group. So I'm going to ask y'all, there are varying levels of how bad this guy, he drops, like, seems like every 10 minutes in the episode. It's like, you think he's bad, it gets worse. This is like got to be the worst villain so far in this show, right? He's the most villainous character we've seen in season 1. Right? I mean, like, is there any competition really? Like, he's the worst human being by far.
Listen, at this point, after watching David, I was rooting for that bloater. Like, I don't like the look of these infected people. Quick shout out to Melissa here. Bella Slay is the big bad in both of her big shows. That's very true. Sure. Appreciate you being here, Melissa. So there's no competition, because I think earlier in this series, it was mentioned, I think, by Joel to Ellie, that the worst enemy really here are people. And I think this very much rang true when it came to David. You can hide behind a mask of righteousness and try to push off your agenda, whatever that agenda may be. The moment that we first met him with his group and they were listening to him quote a verse from Revelations, and you see this young girl crying, and she's upset about because her father is dead and she wants to bury him, and he gives this look off to what was his name again? James. You said it was James. Yeah. James. And there was this unspoken word passed, and I'm like, oh, he's hiding something. Like, I already knew right off the bat he was hiding something that he didn't want to say to the girl, and gives the excuse of, well, the ground is too cold or too solid. Mm-hmm. We'll bury him in the spring. And I'm like, nope, there's something about that. There's something weird about that. Like, you can find a way to bury this father, right? There was just something off from the get-go. Tristan, like, the introduction of David to us, like, you obviously know more than we do when it comes down to this game. So
not really. So a lot of the religious aspects of this episode are not present in the game. That was adapted and changed or added on to by Craig Mazin. It's just not something we see. What we see with David is we see when Ellie is tracking the deer. So, like, in the game, this is the first time that you actually get to play as Ellie. It's after, Joel has been impaled. Ellie gets him to a house, and she takes off with the horse, and she goes to, like, actually go hunt for food, hunt for deer, hunt for rabbits, whatever she can find. And, there's this thing where you're trying to shoot the deer from afar, just like she is, and you have to shoot it maybe 3-4 times. Every time you shoot it, it gets wounded and it moves to a different area. Eventually, this all leads Ellie to James and David at the Silver Lake Resort, or just outside of it. And the same thing, like they negotiate medicine for half the deer. James leaves, so that part is perfectly parallel from the game. But there's a point where, so when they're sitting at the fire and David is talking to Ellie, the dialogue isn't as rich as it is in the show. Like, I don't think he tells her that he used to be a school teacher. May have been clue number one, right? As to, like, some of his intentions and, the demons that he has within him. But that, a lot of this, what you saw last night was probably about 10% more than what's in the game. So a lot of the stuff I was finding out at the same time about David, and I thought, like, there were, like, really good adaptations by the showrunners from the game.
Did him being a school teacher make you feel some type of way?
No, but, like, when he said it, again, like, you're kind of piecing these parts of, like, who David is, right? Like, going into this episode, I knew David was bad. That's the only thing. Like, I knew the end part. I knew it was bad. I knew how it would end. But, like, the breadcrumbs that lead you to, you're starting to think as Ellie, right? And from Ellie's perspective, and she's coming across these two men, and she's just trying to get some food. She's also trying to keep this anonymity with who she is, with who Joel is. So there's all these different things playing in her head. So when I'm watching the episode, hopefully, we're all watching the episode and we're looking at this from Ellie's perspective, right? Just kind of feeling the anxiety of, hey, I need this food, but I need this medicine. These are two men. I've been told not to trust anybody, right? And like this different dichotomy, the cognitive dissonance that's going through her head is, like, super palpable from the screen. So yeah, when he was like, yeah, I used to be a school teacher. Oops, sorry, Siri. So, like, yeah, I used to be a school teacher, and then I became a preacher. Like, first of all, those are two professions that have a bad history when it comes to abuse in children and stuff like that. So, like, the show is giving us these breadcrumbs to let us know that, there's more to David than what meets the eye.
For more information about the abuse that Tristan just spoke about, listen to their 1923 pods. Just saying. Marcy, let us know your thoughts on David.
I didn't trust him from the beginning. I was like, okay, even if I didn't know anything about the game, which I don't. I saw these guys and was like, nope, not to be trusted, especially, Ellie, she's telling them like, stop right there. I will shoot you. Like, just stop. He's like, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll put our guns down, but give me just a few minutes of your time. And I'm like, oh, this is one of those guys, right? That you're telling him to go away, but he's like, oh, well, let me just kind of have a moment of your time. Like that type of guy. I just get a bad feeling because there's always something lurking behind there. So didn't like him from the beginning. And she was right not to trust them, but she let her guard down. And unfortunately, she had to trade with them in order to get the penicillin to help Joel get better. But no, not to be trusted from the beginning. I was like, nope. These guys
kind of going back to the beginning when we really first meet David in the steakhouse, right? And he's like you say, he's preaching, going through Revelations. He tells Hannah, I think her name is, that they can't bury her dad. Like, there's so many contrasts that we should see, but like the main one is look at the faces of the congregation. Like normally, like, yeah, this is a religious cult, but in most religious cults, there's like excitement about the person that they're following, right? There's a look of exaltation, right? And you see them, everybody's down, they're despondent. And I don't think it's just because Hannah's dad died. Like it's been 6 months, they're starving, rations are low, they're running out of rations. Like it's in the deep of winter in Colorado. Like there's just not a lot of hope for hunting, for planting things. Like they look hopeless. And David looks spry. Like he's, dressed well, hair done. Like there's a clear distinction between how he's thriving and how the rest of his flock is thriving. I think we see that then.
Yeah, the thing with me with David is, you obviously he's going to be the villain, but to me, it's like when you'll reference the speech or he's given that sermon in the beginning. My thought is like, I guess the only power he has over these people is just religion, right? He's using religion as a way to manipulate these people because there's nothing else that seems like. Why is he the leader, right? That's my thing. That was initially was, and then as you see it goes on, you see that he's just a master manipulator. He has a hold over these people. And, the part where I go, oh, this guy's really bad is when he backhanded that girl, Hannah, whose father died. And we learn later on that her father was the one who stabbed Joel in episode 6. And then, of course, Joel killed the guy. That was her dad. And that, to me, like, I wasn't expecting that to be put together, to put that was well done because, we needed that because if it's just a random person, you're like, because initially when they talk about how your father's died, he's gone. I'm thinking like, okay, well, what happened to this guy? And then later on, it's like, oh, was he killed for food? Like, did they kill him because like they're gonna eat him?
And that's a great segue to Melissa's comment here in the chat. Anyone else notice how David got like 3 times more food on his plate than anyone else? And that was one of the things I said out loud while watching this episode. I'm like, why does he have more food? Like everyone has like little bit of little.
They had like a stew, right?
They had like a stew,
but he had like a plate of meat. Yeah.
Yeah, and the meat that was
venison.
Brought, right, the meat that was brought to the cooks in the kitchen, venison, but it seemed like a very low amount in general, and it was just like for me it was a little confusing because I thought, well, they got the deer, didn't they? Like the deer should have had way more meat off its bones. But then when they came in with the actual deer, I was just like, oh, this is not deer. This is not deer. So welcome Yesenia to the chat. Appreciate you being here. She says it's a horrifying episode. I agree.
And also, we'll talk about this later, but when Joel sneaks into one of the buildings where they're holding like the dead bodies, he sees the deer. So like the deer had clearly not have been even opened up yet. Right. So
was it the deer or the horse?
Well, the horse was there. There was a horse there for sure. Yeah.
The horse was there. I think the deer, I mean, it looked like a deer. On the second thing, it looked like a deer.
Four-legged big animal. Yeah. There was something in there.
Yeah. First time I thought it was a horse in there, and it may have been a horse. I could have had that wrong. But I definitely want to come back to the food and how much he had on his plate when we talk about the scene with him and Ellie, when Ellie's in the cage, because he says something when he's talking to Ellie, and we'll get to it, but he says something that relates all the way back to how much food was on his plate. And I can't wait to get there and talk about that.
I'm a little concerned now of your enthusiasm. Just saying.
So we'll get back to the plot. So like we've already talked about how Ellie shoots the deer. James and David come upon her. They try to make a trade. They end up making a trade where she gets penicillin. She needs something to help Joel. Joel is back at that abandoned home and he's recovering. She needs to give him something. He's obviously still in bad shape. That's when we learn, like David explains, that he wasn't always a man of God. He found God after the apocalypse. He's now become the leader of this group. And then he also tells Ellie about, hey, like, there was this, there's a guy in our group that died, and he had a little girl like you. And, basically he knows that like Ellie and Joel are together. And so that kind of sets the story on the path that we were on. And then Ellie takes
Joel is killed her dad.
Right. Her dad.
Yeah.
Right. One of the members of his congregation, I guess you'd say. Ellie takes the medicine back to the home, and she injects Joel. You can tell she doesn't know what to do. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do either with the penicillin, but she just injects it right where he has that big, huge wound on his stomach. That looked pretty bad.
Yeah, that was pretty gross. It looked very infected. It was not getting better. It was oozing. I absolutely hated the scene of her injecting the penicillin in him. And I thought to myself, because this is a real thing, people are allergic to penicillin. It's like, what if he's allergic to penicillin and he dies?
That's how he dies.
It's one of those situations. I felt bad for both of them, because Joel obviously is in really rough shape. Ellie doesn't know how to help him, and you see how she's rationing what's left of the food that they got from, what was it, Jackson? And she's like telling him, like, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna go, find help or something like that, and comes back and she's just like, Joe, wake up, what the fuck do I do? Joe, wake up, what the fuck do I do? Like, you see how much she needs him, because I wouldn't know how much to inject in him and like where to put it. I mean, one would think the arm, but you got to do the tourniquet and you got to find the vein, etc. To inject it directly into the wound. Gross. Marcy, what'd you think about that?
Bad look for federal schools.
A little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's what they teach them. I don't know. I wonder, and again, I don't know anything about administering penicillin or any type of intravenous drugs, but I'm wondering if, because she put it so close to the wound, maybe that's why it seemed to have a fast effect on Joel later on. That could be interesting. If anybody knows, like, please let us know, because I have no clue. But yeah, that was hard. I also wouldn't know what to do. I probably would have done the same thing that she did. And I like that she thought on her feet of like trading that, right? Like, any other character might not have thought like, hey, maybe I can trade half of this deer for this penicillin to help Joel feel better. So kudos to Ellie for just kind of thinking about that.
This was some Oregon Trail level shit.
Yeah.
I was also very impressed with her when she told James and David to drop their weapons, back away. James has already left. She dislodges the bullets inside the guns just in case, right? Like, I was very impressed with how she, under pressure, she was still keeping her composure.
And so many of the decisions that are made in this episode are kind of speak to the theme of like deprivation, right? And this goes back to like the title of the episode, When We Are in Need. You could finish that sentence by, hey, when we are in need, we do desperate things like eat people, right? Or when we're in desperate need, we, trade penicillin for this deer meat that we need to eat. When we're in need, we leave Joel in his garage because rations are running out. We only have but so much food as it is. And it's time to like actually go make stuff happen. And we see that like David, one could argue, I think, and David knows that he's always been bad in some type of sense, but I could see a world where he set out to like do good for the people around him. And, things happen. I think that whole group is just poor hunters and just, they ill-suited to like survival, right? But like the deprivation led to them saying, hey, we'll save this deer meat and let's, eat our own dead. Like, everything in this episode is kind of predicated off of not having a lot of options, and the threat of not surviving is like imminent. And then so like they actually have to go do things, right? Ellie had to go leave and find food because there was no other option, right? And she had to take all the things that Joel taught her and kind of start to apply those things, right, in a tactile way. Her taking the bullets out, that could only have come from Joel. And just understanding under pressure, let me, take these, empty this out. Her following David while James went to go get the medicine, she had no other choice, right? She was deprived of options, right? So again, this goes all the way back to the title, When We Are in Need. It plays into like so many of the decisions that all the characters make. And ultimately leads us to where we are in the plot.
Yeah, so Ellie is left Joel. She's trying to lead David and James and his group of guys away from Joel, and she gets captured. And you can tell David tells his group, take her alive, but they're trying to kill her. I mean, let's be real. When James shoots that horse, like, yeah, the horse is a big target, but he's shooting at her, and he just hits the horse, and I mean, she takes a tremendous fall, and they're able to capture her. It's honestly surprising that she doesn't die from the horse falling on her, just from the fall itself. That's a pretty brutal way in the snow to, be taken off your horse.
And it appeared that he shot at the horse's head, which I mean,
Right.
Still a fairly large target, but Ellie's head is very close to the horse's head as well. So one could argue for sure that he could have accidentally killed Ellie in the process of trying to stop that horse. But yeah, to have quote unquote faith in David as the leader, but he's challenging David's motives of why he wants to bring Ellie back, I think was rightfully said or rightfully made, because to James, it's like, this is just another mouth to feed.
Right.
And he didn't think that she deserved that because she and her accomplice killed this man of theirs, his friend. And when James and the group approach her while she's on the ground unconscious, one says, kill her, like, do it. But then David fires a warning shot in the air and comes and picks her up and says, okay, go look for the man, whoever he is. And he carries her back to their compound, if you will. I'm going to call it a compound.
The resort. But
Compound.
James is deprived of so many things, especially when it comes to David. He's deprived of vengeance, right? Like he is dead set on vengeance for Hannah's dad. He's deprived. We find out he's deprived of respect from David. Like there's, Brittany, you mentioned like the beginning where there's a look between those two, and I think the show at the beginning of the episode wants us to look at James and David as equals, right? Even though, David is a leader, James is kind of being framed as David's right-hand man, but we come to find out later in the episode that David doesn't respect like any of them at all, right? And even the way that David responds to being challenged by James, he doesn't even respond with words for the most part. It's more just kind of like a look, right? Again, there are more breadcrumbs to let us know that David is not good dad, as he's kind of being portrayed as. There's a sadistic streak, there's a violent streak, there's a narcissistic streak there, and everybody sees it. We see it in the congregation when they're eating. We see it at the beginning. We see it in the looks that James and the rest of their crew have when David turns around and just kind of gives that look. It's like, oh, what's going to happen, or how is he going to retaliate, or like he doesn't look at anybody as equals. Even though he kind of tries to gaslight Ellie into making her think that he wants to view her as an equal, he doesn't, right? She's there to serve a purpose for him, for his, sadism, for his narcissism, so on and so forth.
So now, Ellie's captured. David tells a couple of his guys to now look for Joel, look for the man. So they go looking for him. Ellie's taken to this cage where this is a pretty pivotal scene where David's talking to her, and he says a lot to her. To me, one of the strangest things is he talks about his admiration for the cordyceps. Like he talks about how they're not evil. He's like, they're fruitful. It multiplies, it feeds and protects its children, and it secures its future with violence if it must. It loves. And right there, again, like I said, there's these levels of him progressing to being more of a villain in this episode. And it's like he hits the little girl. You can tell he's maybe abusing the girl of some way. Then now you're trying to kill people or whatever. You're talking about how you're motivate, or you think that the cordyceps is not a bad thing, or you've learned to kind of see there's a positive to that, which is pretty crazy. Later on, we see some more steps of him going to become the worst villain in the show.
Can we talk about? This is the part I wanted to talk about, because he says, he starts to describe the cordyceps as basically feeding off each other to get stronger, taking care of its children. Like you said, protecting its future with violence. When he's talking about the cordyceps, David is talking about himself, right? And you go back to how the congregation views him, how he treats the congregation as a leader. We mentioned him having more food than everybody else. He's literally feeding off his own congregation in order to make himself stronger vis-a-vis cordyceps, right? Just like cordyceps are. And so he said something interesting earlier, again, when he was talking to Ellie at the fire. And Ellie, kind of questions the logic of him finding God after the apocalypse. And I don't think he found God after the apocalypse. What I think David did was he saw the world end, and he saw what the cordyceps were doing to the world. And instead of fearing that, he admires that, because it allows him to release a lot of the baser instincts and baser notions that he has about people. I'm pretty sure that he's always been a sexual abuser, right? He says, I've had this violence within me. I've had this evil within me, and I've tried to, tamper it down, as a lot of sexual abusers, child abusers, so on, as they do. And when the world ended, it just basically gave him free reign to just let all this go, right? And to him, that's finding God. But what he's doing is use, as most religious cult leaders do, is use God, use religion as an anchor for the people around them, right? To tie them to, right? I'm the father, right? I'm the man. I get the big piece of chicken. No one questions my decisions. And we do this because I'm speaking to you all God is speaking to you all through me, right? It's the worst kind of gaslighting. It's the worst kind of narcissism, because he's appointed himself as this messenger of God. And he fortifies this title, this position through violence, through abuse, and things like that. And what he's doing is using the cordyceps as like the
mantle.
The mantle, yeah, the mantle for which he's able to do these things. Like he literally, the way he's talking about it, he admires them. He said they love, right? Cordyceps, they love, right? Tess would agree with him, but that's not love that he's talking about. He's talking about, you know, taking advantage of something and using the cordyceps behavior and religion as like the catalyst for his abuse.
I mean, that's just being like a dictator. You know, you have the fear, you embrace that fear that people have, and you mold it to be your weapon of power, right? And yeah, David's twisted. Marcy, what do you make of David and his projections of being this kind of righteous individual?
I mean, it's bullshit that like I could see right through, but I think sometimes it's hard for people to see through that, especially if they feel like they need something or someone to believe in, or like Tristan said, an anchor. So I can see how some people might just kind of be subjected to that. I thought the whole cordyceps speech that he gave was interesting. I was like, I mean, I kind of see where you're going, but again, I'm not buying this. But I did think that it was interesting that while, you know, this whole apocalypse is going on because of cordyceps and, you know, it's this terrible fungus, penicillin came in, and that's the reason that Joel was able to then, you know, do what he did and protect Ellie in the end. So it's like, okay, like, yes, there are some good fungi, but cordyceps, I wouldn't like say that like that's the good fungus. It like literally caused the whole apocalypse. But no, like he's just a bad dude that, like Tristan said, is using religion to just kind of glorify himself. And he's always been this type of bad person. He just capitalized upon the whole situation to again glorify himself and to like meet the urges that he has, right? Like I'm sure that Ellie's not the first girl that he tried to abuse. I'm sure he might be abusing other women or girls in the congregation.
Well, especially with Hannah, the first time we again meet him in the congregation, and she's in tears listening to the verse from Revelations, and he kneels down and speaks gently to her, softly, right? Like you may feel that you don't have a father anymore, but you do. And it's like, are you referring to yourself, sir? Because that is disturbing beyond any measure whatsoever. And we got that kind of reiteration, especially with Hannah again at the dinner table, when he says, you all may have heard this rumor that we encountered this girl, and the person that she's with killed whatever his name was. And Hannah speaks up again. She goes, we should find them and kill them. And he walks over to her and backhands slaps her, and then he like gives out his hand as if, here, let me help you up. And she seems very fearful of what is he going to do next.
He makes her reach for the hand.
Yes.
In a way of like saying, oh, you're reaching towards me. Like you're accepting me as your father, or as this patriarchal figure. Like that's classic abuse, you know, classic abuser trope, you know, like make you hurt you and then make you come back to me in the way that I want to.
Yeah. Crazy mentality and crazy way of like gaslighting people. It's just, that's on a whole other level. Like this episode made me so mad on so many different levels, and it's all thanks to David. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, he's a master manipulator, and he tries it with Ellie. He says, you know, tells her that, you know, he sees her as an equal. He's like, you know, you're a natural leader, you're smart, you're loyal, but most importantly, you're violent. You know, he tells her that she has a violent heart, and so does he. And that's that's one of their kindred spirits. And, you know, again, she's
literal. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that's a little like grooming technique right there.
Yeah. She's 14 years old. He's like mid 40s, 50s or something. You know, it's not ideal, you know, but he tells her that everything happens for a reason, which that gets turned on him later in the episode by Ellie. But so while he's trying to convince her to join him, she has a discovery while she's sitting on the ground in the cage. She notices there's an ear. And at this point, I hadn't put it together yet that they were eating people. So because it's before we saw that, then you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because if you remember in one of the previous scenes, whenever they got the deer, one of the guys in the kitchen brings, I think it's that the guy that died, I think it's his wife is the one who's in the kitchen. And they have these pieces of cut up meat. And she goes, "What is it?" And he said, "It's venison," but he's not the most, not the most convincing way.
There's a pregnant pause, and
right.
Then he's
but
like,
then you watch
venison.
her with her hands on this bloody meat, dipping it or dunking it into like a pot or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's probably her husband's body. Did y'all think about that, or am I wrong, or is that like?
No, I don't think you're off base on that. It makes the whole situation just that much worse. Obviously, she is possibly handling her deceased husband's meat.
Yeah,
there's no other way of saying that without saying that. Sorry,
not like that.
Not like that, Tristan. Stop it. No, but she is.
I was like, how is she gonna land this? Come on.
His remains. Fine. I don't know how to say it. Hate y'all. Cook y'all up too. No, but she's literally handling what's his remains and putting it in the stew that everyone in this congregation, including herself and her daughter, are going to eat. But then I wonder too, in this moment, was David actually eating the deceased friend as well, or someone actually got like real meat, like venison, and gave that to him, and that's why he's got like 3 times more than everyone else? I don't know. Ugh.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, it's not the same. Like we said, everyone else is like getting a stew, and he's getting a plate full of meat and like vegetables. Like it's like he's like actually eating at a steakhouse where they're kind of like in a soup line or something. Getting
and that same widow gets up from the table when David sits down to go get his plate, and I was just like, he's got legs. He can go get his own food. Like, the leader of this congregation should lead by example and get his own damn food. Like, just saying. Yeah. Just saying.
So the bad guy checklist is he's a religious cult leader. He is a cordyceps enthusiast, admirer, sympathizer. And now he's a cannibal. So, and also probably a sexual abuser. I mean, almost definitely a sexual abuser. So, this guy, he's almost like a 5-tool player in baseball terms for a bad guy. Not a good dude, this David.
He's a narcissist. I mean, I think all of these things are, buoyed on by the fact that he is a narcissist, and he sees himself above the people he's supposed to be leading. When he talks to Ellie, and he calls them sheep. Right. Like, but not in any type of endearing way. Like, I'm the shepherd and I'm here to lead them to the promised land or lead them to, whatever, any type of success. These are people beneath me, and it literally pains me to try to lead them. They're not my equal intellectually. They're not my equal physically. Like, they're not able to like understand the hard truths of this world. Which is bullshit, because they may be able to understand more truths if you weren't lying to them all the time. Like, again, this is a narcissism like trope of lying to people and then saying that they're not able to handle the truth, right? Like, these two things don't jive. Like, you didn't want to tell Hannah that you brought her dad's remains back to basically supplement the lack of actual food that you all have, right? Like, they're eating. I mean, I'm sure Hannah was eating her own father too. Like, narcissist.
Which I want to ask the question to both, but I'm gonna start with Marcy. Marcy, when David comes to talk to Ellie, the moment that she realizes that there's an ear on the floor of where she's being held captive, he brings her food, a bowl of probably the stew, and he And of course, Ellie puts 2 and 2 together. She's smart. She kicks the food away and says, you're fucking eating people. And he goes, well, for what it's worth, that wasn't people. Like, that was real. Do you think he was being honest in that, given all the lies that he's been telling since we've met the man? Like, do you think he was being real with her or just trying to manipulate her even more?
Hell no, like he was lying and manipulating. Like that was 100% another person. Yeah, no.
Yeah, Tristan.
No, I'm not giving him any benefit of the doubt. Again, I haven't seen anybody cutting up a deer, right? And why, of all people? And he says, like, yeah, I was going to tell you eventually, but like, why, of all people, would you give the deer meat to the person you have held captive instead of like, the actual people who've been following you? If there is a case for that being real food, it's from the fact that he clearly does not respect anybody that's in that congregation. And he has at least shown some level of admiration, even though it's completely grooming towards Ellie. But I still don't think it was real food, because why? Why would it be?
Yeah.
Justin, your thoughts?
No, I don't think it was, because I don't think they have real food except for potentially that deer and maybe that horse. But we see the horse is still pretty much intact, and it's I feel like there's not this all happens in a short period of time. I believe it's probably like a day or two max. So maybe the deer was still in their meat locker or whatever with all the dead bodies that are hanging there. So I don't see why he would.
Yeah, I just want to know, like, outside of the obvious, because Joel, sorry, I want to keep calling him Joe. Joel killed Hannah's father, and that's presumably the person that they're eating. How does this work outside of not getting your regular deer and elk? Like, do they just like pick off someone and just say, hey, let's like take them out back and shoot them? Or they're just hoping that they die of like illness? You know what I'm saying? Like last resort kind of situation. What's happening?
I think the way the show kind of frames is like they're just eating. Somebody dies and they don't bury them. Like that's why they got them, hanging up in the little meat locker, basically. Yeah, they're inventory. When you die at Silver Lake, you become inventory. And that's pretty much what that is.
Oh man, move away from all this talk of cannibalism.
So meanwhile, so Joel is there. The guys from David's group are pursuing him, and Joel wakes up, thankfully, and he's able to take down a couple of the guys who are coming after him.
Yeah, because Ellie left him armed.
Yeah, gave him a knife.
Mm-hmm.
That was enough for Joel to torture these two guys.
It's pretty good. Real quick, I gotta share this comment. This is great from Melissa. Some kind of insane musical chairs. Winner becomes dinner. Damn it. It's pretty good. Continue, Justin. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, the scene where Joel, takes down these two guys, ties them up, tortures the guys, ends up making them tell him where Ellie is, making them tell him, first of all, that she's alive and where they took her. And
he was back like almost at 100. Yeah, he was almost back at 100%. The way how quickly he had to have moved from the moment the David supporter walked into the house, walked down the stairs, and the mattress is empty. You see the blood stain from Joel, and dude's walking around checking, see if everything's clear, and Joel just comes up from behind and stabs him in the neck with the knife. I was like, wow, like pretty fast for someone who's been incapacitated for quite some time, right? I was impressed, and he did not stop. He did not let up at all.
This is really good penicillin.
This is where the beginning to episode 6 pays off again, because when he and Ellie basically kidnapped the older couple, right? Same tactic. You show me where you are, and she better be doing the same thing. So we see how that stuff plays out. Like all these Easter eggs from earlier episodes just continuing to pay off as we get later in the season.
Mm-hmm. Marcy, you were saying something?
No, I just thought that was some really good penicillin, like the fast acting penicillin. He was just back.
Yeah, I have no idea how much dosage Ellie was giving him, how frequent it was, but it did the damn trick, obviously. And I liked to kind of round out what Tristan was saying about you better be honest, because I'm gonna ask your buddy over here and he better say the same thing. It ends up not asking the second person, and he's like, oh, picks up like this, I don't know, metal pipe, and dude's like, I ain't telling you shit, fuck you, whatever. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I believed him. Whack. Like, that was fucking
that was so cold.
Oh man. I
So
can't
cold.
tell you, I cannot tell you how many times throughout this episode I was saying fuck yeah, like fuck yeah. It was great.
And I bet one of those scenes was the next one where Ellie breaks David's finger. And Brittany, you want to walk us through that?
Oh.
My goodness gracious, y'all. This was where I think I fell in love with Ellie. She's my hero at this point for being 14 years old and living in this apocalyptic era. She is playing, or it seems like she's playing into David's hands when he's revealing all these truths, or quote unquote truths, about himself, about his violent heart and how she has a violent heart. He recognizes it. You're a true leader. I'm a true leader. Together we can take over the galaxy. Sorry, that's the wrong movie. But you get the idea. He is trying to appeal to her to say, in other words, for you to survive, you and I need to join forces. Together we have a future, we can make things happen, etc. And you see Ellie, who's far back in the cage, walk very slowly towards him, and he rests his hand on the bars, and then she puts her hand on the opposite side, and he puts his hand over hers, and she does the same thing. And then in a split second, she breaks motherfucker's fingers and is trying to get the keys off of him so that she can escape. And he, of course, will bang her head upside the iron bars, and now he's pissed off. Right now he's gonna kill her. Before, he was gonna save her by making her into his little, God knows what, sex slave or little wifey. I don't know. It was very disturbing. I was cringing. And he throws back at her something she said earlier about being cut up into tiny little pieces, and says basically, that's your fate now, and walks away. But before he walks away, she finally reveals her name, mouth all bloodied, she's kind of rough shape, and she says, Ellie. He goes, what? Ellie, tell them that little girl Ellie fucking broke your fingers. And it was just like, you're my hero. I love you. It was great.
And all this is adapted pretty much 1-to-1 from the game. And it's so scary in the game, because you get to that point and you really think, like, how is she going to get out of this? Like, I don't see any way that she's going to get out of this. And like, David at this point is way more sinister. He's when she breaks his finger in the game, like, he is super pissed, just as we see in the show. So I love the 1-to-1 like adaptation from the game to like this particular scene, because this is one of the more iconic. It's also towards the end. It's one of the more iconic parts of the game. So I love seeing that.
But in the game, doesn't as listening to the podcast, they talked about how in the game David and Ellie kind of have to team up to take down some clickers, right?
And that's what I meant by there being much more action.
Right.
So after Ellie follows David back to this shed or this little off building in between where the deer was and where their resort is, and they're sitting there having a conversation, and they get basically ambushed by a bunch of a horde of infected, including a bloater. Like, it's out of nowhere. Like, they're coming through the windows. You have to shoot them before they get inside the building. A few of them make it in, and it's just Ellie and David back to back. So the bonding moment doesn't happen over a conversation. It happens through like actual gameplay. And in the show, they kind of bond over Just, David in like his very easy kind of like cool dad talk before Ellie realizes that, the story he's telling is about her and Joel. So it's a little bit different. That's why, again, I expected 10 times more action because I thought, you at least get a few more infected. But I do like that the show is not overusing the infected. Like the threat of the infected are always there, right? Like they're in all corners of the earth. They're underneath the earth, in some cases. And the show is being a lot more diligent. Maybe it's budget, but like the show is way more diligent in how it chooses to utilize them as a force, as something to be reckoned with. And the reason why I thought this show is going to take off is not because of the infected. It's the conflict between human versus human, right? Mm-hmm. Humans that all think that they're doing the right thing, they're doing good. David thinks he's doing the right thing, right? Twisted as that is, he thinks that he absolutely thinks Joel is dead. So he thinks that he's providing Ellie like this safe space in this, world where otherwise she'd be alone and she'd die, right? He's looking at her as like an animal. Like, what do people say before they kill off the animal? Like without the mother or without this protector, this kid is going to die, right? And by the time we get to the end of this episode, we see that Ellie is no longer a kid, right? She's no longer it's no longer the lone wolf and the cub. These are like two wolves, right? And we see that through like the way that she's able to like read these situations. She knows, hey, if David puts his hand on my hand, I have an opportunity there to break his finger and try to go for these keys, right? When David slams the knife, or the butcher knife on the table, she understands what to say. And again, contrast this with Joel when he's been like in these pressure moments and he tells Tommy, I did not know what to say. Ellie knows what to say, right? Ellie, again, we're seeing the maturation of Ellie as a wolf and not just like this cub. She knows where the knife is. She knows to buy herself time to use that knife to kill James and then make her escape. Like she's learning through practice, through experience, and not just by hearing the things that Joel's saying. She's actually starting to apply these things to become the Ellie we're going to know and kind of love, kind of fear.
There's a comment here from Melissa. She says, I love Ellie outsmarting David with the bite on the hand. And Marcy, if this is something you can kind of walk us through, we've already talked about how Ellie kind of ends up on this butcher table, but like tell us what went on in that moment with David and James, because they're about to kill her.
Yeah, it was actually pretty scary. Like I was very scared for her. They just pick her up and just slam her on the table, and I was like, wow, this is really violent that they're willing to do this to a kid. I mean, just she's still a kid and you're willing to do this. Okay, like you definitely have no humanity left. So they're about to, kill her basically and chop her up and feed her to everybody. She is smart and takes the opportunity to say like, hey, look, I've bitten you on the hand. I'm infected too. Like you need to stop. And, they're like, don't believe you. So she tells them like, okay, like lift up my sleeve so you can see. And I think they wanted to be very skeptical, but I definitely saw the fear in David's face when he saw that. He was like, no, she would have turned already. But I think there was still something in him that was like, holy shit, like now what have I done? So I love that she was able to outsmart him that way and then use that to her advantage again to be able to get that butcher knife and then just be like, bye, James.
Yeah, and you tell she totally got, like, James is the one who right away says, oh, David, like he believes that David's going to become infected. So that's perfect distraction for her to, then take that cleaver to the side of James's neck, and Troy Baker's done. He's one and done with the show. But yeah, no, she's like you said, Tristan, she's like the opposite of Joel in this situation where she knows what to do in these scenarios to stay alive. And she's able to escape. David shoots at her, and we get to the end where David hunts Ellie down into the old steakhouse. She accidentally lights the place on fire. She has a log from the fire. She throws it at David, but it hits the side of the wall, and the place starts, it's lit on fire now, and then he's looking for her in this steakhouse while the place is catching fire, and he screams, you don't know how good I am, which
Oh,
is such a villain thing to say while chasing after this 14-year-old girl in this steakhouse that's on fire.
did y'all catch how he said you can't get out, the doors are locked? Did anyone else think of Joel Osteen like I did? I mean, just out of sheer curiosity. I can't be the only one out here who thought that sort of connection. Or I'm just a horrible person.
Osteen was telling you can't get in.
You can't get in. That's right. You can't get in. That's right. No, that scene in itself was really scary. The fact that this whole place is going up in flames. David's taking his sweet ass time trying to look for her. Of course, she's smart. She's moving. She's arming herself with the steak knife or something of that nature. And she's just waiting for the opportunity to come after him. But yeah, he's saying these things like, we're not going to make it, or you're not going to make it out alive, implying that he would. Or maybe both. I'm trying to remember the line, but it doesn't really matter. The situation's bad. Ellie knows that she's got to get out of here somehow. She knows that he has the keys, especially if the doors are locked from the inside. And when opportunity strikes, she leaps after him, stabs him in the belly, and he kind of bests her for a moment, knocks her down on the ground. And as she's trying to reach for the cleaver that he was wielding, he stops her and he gets on top of her. This is where my heart leapt out of my chest. I was infuriated. I was so scared for Ellie, and Bella Ramsey. My goodness gracious, girl. Talk about a master class performance right here. The fear on her face. She's clinging on for dear life. And finally it happens, right? She finally is able to take down David, and it's not just one swing to the face or whatever the knife landed, right? She goes again and again and again, to make sure. I'm sorry.
And then she pauses and she keeps going again and again.
She wants to make sure that he is not going to get up to assault her or anyone else for that matter. Probably pretty sure that's not what she's thinking, but yeah, that was intense.
And Brittany, right before this happens, we see Joel has found his way to, he's very close to the vicinity of where this is happening, and they set it up like he's going to do this traditional hero thing and come and make the save, and that's what you're led to kind of think he's going to do. I mean, especially when David is on top of Ellie, you're thinking, okay, Joel's going to bust the door and blow this guy's brains out. That's what I thought. I fell for it. I thought that makes a lot of sense. And then, but for her to then get out of that spot and then to get on top of him and then just, like we talked about, stab him, 25 times or whatever, and just, make sure he's dead. That's an incredible moment, honestly. It was a really strong finish to the episode.
And this is a deviation from the game. So, same thing. Ellie escapes after killing James, and she's making her way through the steakhouse. So the game has they have these missions or these parts where you have to, if you're facing this really big bad villain, you have to sneak up behind them multiple times, right? Just as she's kind of
so annoying.
Right, it's the scariest shit ever, right? Because you can't attack these people head on. You have to sneak up behind them, and you have to stab them, and you'll stab them, they'll smack you away, and then you'll go hide again, and then kind of restart this over until you get the final blow. But Joel actually finds a way in the game, and Joel helps save her or whatever.
Right.
But it's saying in this, the entire thing is on fire. So you're sneaking around, trying to catch David from behind, while also trying to dodge these dropping pieces of wood that are on fire and stuff like that. It's a really harrowing part of the game. It's anxiety inducing, but it's one of the best parts of the game, honestly.
And now knowing that this was a deviation from the game, Marcy, like what does that mean for you, knowing and seeing that the creators decided to have Ellie save herself from the situation?
I loved it. I'm glad that that's a choice that they made, because I think it was important for Ellie to do that for herself. She's gone through so much trauma throughout this whole season. She has all of this pent up anxiety, trauma, anger, fear, everything. And I think that at that moment, that's what was happening, right? Not only does she want to kill David because of all the terrible things that he's done to her and, was going to do to her, but that was like her cathartic release of everything else that she's been through this season. So I love that they had her save herself. I don't think it was overkill just because he was a terrible person. So I was like all for it. I like that they did this.
Yay for violence. Yay.
So after Ellie breaks free from the fiery steakhouse, she's now outside the building, and Joel, he finds her, comes up from behind her, and then of course she thinks that she's being attacked by somebody else, and she's screaming, let me go, whatever. And then he comforts her and he says, it's okay, it's going to be okay, baby girl, which is what he told his daughter 20 years ago, the last time he saw her. So Tristan, what was that moment like for you, and is that a part of the game at all either? Is that separate? Does he have a moment where he embraces her and refers to her as baby girl?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't remember if it's in the same vein, but yes, he does. But I love, oh my God, that it was the perfect, I won't say perfect. There's so much happening there. Like Ellie, like she's struggling to like verbalize what happened. So she just kind of leans into him. And again, this kind of mirrors back to earlier in the episode when after she gives him the penicillin, she just kind of leans into his chest. And what is being shown there, first of all, with Joel not being the one that saved her, is we're seeing something break inside of Ellie, right? Now, how sustainable is it? Like we'll see as we continue to go forward, especially into the next season. But what happened inside of that steakhouse transformed Ellie, and she's never going to be the same. But what we're seeing is that Joel is still, or he's becoming increasingly like a center for her to always come back to. We talked about it on 1923, like, Spencer having a center to come back. Alex is his center, regardless of how far he may be off, but Alex is his center. Joel is Ellie's center, and Ellie is Joel's center. And in a way, he did kind of save her because after going through that experience, she needed somebody to be there to let her know that it's okay. Like the thing that she just experienced, the thing that she witnessed, it's okay, right? Like Joel didn't need to like physically come in and save her from David. He needed to like be there emotionally. That's what she needed the most there. And for Joel, Ellie is saving him, right? Like being like breaking through that wall of being able to call her baby girl. Like he no longer sees her. We're way past the cargo part. I didn't believe that when he said it, but we're so far past that. We're so far past her being somebody that he can let go of, like just in general. And I'll use this to make my final prediction of this season, which is if you love this episode, the finale, I think, just based on what I know from playing, is going to be way better than episode 8. Right. And again, it's the big payoff of the emotional journey that both of them have been on towards each other. Mm-hmm. Like being able to accept each other as not just companions, but family. Like Joel sees Ellie as family and vice versa. And that's going to inform both of their actions as we move forward. And not just in next episode, but as we move forward in this overall story, like season 2 and beyond, whatever that looks like.
So Marcy, what are your thoughts on how Joel comforts Ellie after all that happens in this episode.
I thought it was so sweet. It made me very emotional. Definitely for Joel and Ellie, just seeing again, like Tristan said, just that relationship solidifying, and that they're way past just, she is cargo and he's just, the guy shepherding her to wherever she needs to go. I loved it as a viewer. I loved it. Listen, I don't know if I've just been single for too long, but just I was like, do I need somebody to like stab somebody in the kneecap for me? Like, is that what I need? Like, that scene did a lot for me. And then just like the end also did a lot for me. So, yes, Pedro Pascal, thank you. You were amazing in this episode and amazing in that close. I loved it. So, as a viewer, like, I liked it that way, but also as like taking it in the context of like this father-daughter relationship, I thought that was just really, really sweet.
And lastly, like, think about the religious symbolism of Ellie basically having to fight a devil-like figure in this fire, right? And escaping that into like this pure white snow, right? Yeah. And the only thing that's pure in her life at this moment is her relationship with Joel.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Brittany, how do you follow that?
Thug tears, all right? Thug tears were shed the moment he embraced her, the moment that he called her baby girl. Like, I stopped and I looked at John and I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually about to cry right now. Just because the first, not the first, but when Ellie and Joel first met, how hardened he was towards her and how you could tell he absolutely wanted nothing to do with her. She more or less felt the same way, but she was just happy to have someone in her life to walk this journey with, and to see that hardened wall break around Joel, and for him to just embrace her as his own, if you will, and calling her baby girl. Because that's not like a nickname that you give just anybody. Like, that person has to mean something incredibly special to you, of course, family or not. And that moment for me solidified just how much Joel really needs Ellie. But I'm very concerned about Ellie's state of mind and wellness from here on out, because I don't know if this is something that she's going to be able to recover from, regardless of having Joel as her center or not. It just seems really concerning, like something just broke inside her, and I don't know if anyone is going to be able to help her kind of mend that, and including herself, because that's something that no child, no person, despite any age, should ever have to endure. And it's a beautiful moment, but it also comes with some sort of repercussions. Not because Joel wasn't there or anything. I'm not saying any of it's his fault. It's just every action has a consequence. And I'm just very concerned about Ellie.
Looking ahead to, and we see the little teaser for the season finale, it does seem like Ellie is focused on the mission. She's quoted as saying, after all we've been through, it can't be for nothing. There's no halfway with this. We finish what we started. So, and I mean, the teaser is very quick. It's 30 seconds, maybe. There's a lot of action, it seems.
I think we're getting a flashback too.
Oh, flashback. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I think I know who's going to be in that flashback.
I think you're right, because that scene seemed very familiar, and Joel looked very healthy, considering the state that he's currently in. So,
and I think there was a quick image of somebody we have not seen yet in this.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay. Finale's going to make you cry.
Damn it, Tristan!
You're gonna cry.
Shit. I'm not ready for this. I'm ready for it.
What other expectations? Yeah. What other finale expectations do we have? Marcy, I'll start with you first. What's your expectation for the finale?
Like Tristan said, I probably gonna cry. Expectation is that we're going to see a little bit of a more hardened Ellie and like what comes with that. So I'm interested to see that. And also I'm interested to see Joel knowing everything that Ellie had to go through, or maybe like not knowing the extent of all she had to go through, how does that also affect him feeling like I was supposed to be protecting her and I let her down?
And I don't know if this is going to happen. Like, I have no information on this, but based on who I think we're going to see, hopefully we get a little even more backstory on why Ellie is immune, right? And like some of the machinations that led her to ultimately lead her to Joel. Like, hopefully we see that. I have, this is pure speculation. Again, the only thing I will say is that outside of like the finale will make you cry. The finale, one is a perfect payoff for, like, again, Joel and Ellie's relationship and the build up to it over the course of the season. And it's going to, like I've said this in previous episodes, if they keep the finale the way it is in the game, it's going to cause you to look at one of these characters in a certain way, in a very complex way. Meaning, like, there's just different ways you can look at their actions, but you will understand why they made the actions, but it won't make it any less heartbreaking, I would say. This finale is going to be, it's going to be great. I have all expectations. It's going to be like a really, really great finale. I can't wait.
Brittany, what do you think? You think we're going to get like a cliffhanger kind of ending, or?
Oh,
What do you
well,
see?
without a doubt. And listen, this is coming from someone who genuinely had no interest in watching this show, and Tristan convinced me. And I thank you for that, but I also hate you at the same time because I'm so invested in this show and the outcomes for these characters. Again, I'm concerned for Ellie's well-being. I'm concerned if she'll be able to come back from it. I don't anticipate she will. But now I'm also just curious overall the direction that they're headed. Are they going to go back to Jackson where Joel's brother is and try to get supplies once more before heading off in the direction to, I think it was Salt Lake City, where maybe the Fireflies move to? Or what's the next move? Like, how do you come back from that whole situation of Joel basically being at death's door and Ellie being assaulted to a degree, but more mentally and emotionally assaulted, I think would be fair to say. So I don't know. I don't have any predictions for the finale. I obviously just have more questions than anything to offer, because is she really in it at this point? I agree with Tristan about what we saw in the teaser was a flashback to when Ellie and Joel and Tess started this journey. But is that going to be the same after Ellie has gone through what she's gone through?
Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't catch the flashback part of the trailer, so that kind of changes my view on what to expect. Is it going to be a flashback heavy finale? Probably not, but I mean, this show could make that work. You know what I'm saying? Like they've with episode 3 and for much of episode 5, like the way they told that story. Well, I mean, episode 7 obviously was a looking back, a character thinking back to her past and all that's happened. I wouldn't put it past this show. They could pull that off. I do think that we're going to get more of the clickers. I agree with Tristan in the fact that I think they've done a really good job of, it's like in the movie Jaws. Like Jaws is way scarier because you don't see the shark every 5 minutes. The more you see the shark, you're like, oh, that's just a big, dumb, fake looking thing. But like not seeing it and being scared is way more powerful. And that's what they've done with the clickers in this show. But I do think we're gonna get there's gonna be some kind of battle or something with the clickers. And I'm looking forward to it. This has been an absolute blast of a show to follow. It is just another like notch on the belt for HBO for their I mean, they have the title belt for like prestige shows. Like they have all the best shows. I mean, yeah, Netflix has some every once in a while, and like maybe, Peacock might have something or Disney Plus, but like HBO consistently has the top shows, and this has become one of their like creme de la creme, like right up there with Succession, Game of Thrones. So I'm excited to see how the season ends. And we know that it's going to be at least be a 3-season show. The head of HBO on a podcast a few weeks back, he mentioned that was the plan, is 3 seasons. So that's good to know, considering the game is only 2 games. So
they've already begun talking about how they're going to make the 3rd game. So
okay.
By the time we get to the 3rd season, I think we'll have a 3rd game. I can't wait.
And I think season 2 for The Last of Us is shooting this year at some point. So that probably means season 2 will air either late 2024 or early 2025.
I'm thinking 2025.
Probably.
Bella needs to grow up a little bit, because the gap between the first game and the second game is 4 years. Not like in real time, but like Ellie ages by 4 years.
Okay.
In there, so.
And I'd imagine that HBO wouldn't want to have 2. Not saying this would be bad, but 2 hit series airing at the same time, because I'm anticipating House of the Dragon is going to be coming out probably the end of 2024, give or take.
Oh, they won't air at the same time. They'll that 8 o'clock, for us Central Time Sunday time slot is like their primetime spot.
Cherished.
So, yeah. So they won't. There's going to be a buffer between those shows. If those are, they won't even be back to back probably. So it's almost like they do it quarterly. They try to have like a big show every quarter to get people to continue to subscribe to their services and everything. But yeah, this has been fun following this show, and I'm really looking forward to the finale. So do y'all have any final thoughts before we sign off?
I'm ready for it. No, I'm not ready for it. I'm ready for it, but I'm not ready for it. Like,
give Bella Ramsey all the awards for this episode.
All
the
yes.
awards.
Yeah,
Let's go.
She's great. Like, she's definitely like, I mean, Lyanna Mormont was like her big first kind of role, but I mean, she's already surpassed that with Ellie. So very cool.
The North remembers.
Right.
I plan to fight for the North. I plan to fight for the North, not have somebody fight for me. God damn it.
There we go.
God damn it, Leon.
There we go.
Damn it.
Oh, man.
So now you know what we think about episode 8 of The Last of Us. We want to know what you think about it. And Brittany, how can people tell us what they think about the show?
So we encourage everyone to join our live streams just like today. We appreciate those who have taken the time to join us. Melissa and Yesenia, appreciate y'all being here so much. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as like this video and hit that notification bell. That way you know the next time we'll be live streaming. But in the meantime, you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's at Watchers Basement. You can also help spread the word about us by using hashtag Watchers Basement. You can send us articles, memes, whatever. Tell your friends, family, coworkers, clickers, bloaters, whatever. It's cool. Like, just tell the whole world, even religious cults.
Right.
That's cool too. Not really.
Especially them.
And last but not least, you can find us wherever you get your audio podcasts, including Apple, Google, and Spotify, thanks to anchor.fm. Be sure to give us a 5-star rating. And Justin, I think for the finale episode, we're changing things up just ever so slightly.
Yeah, we're going to do something different. We're going to kind of do an instant reaction pod on Sunday night. We haven't determined the time yet, but we're going to go live maybe an hour or so after the episode ends. So check us out on Sunday night after The Last of Us season finale airs.
Buddy, I will be inebriated. Good.
Copious notes, sir.
It should be a good time. Yeah. Instant reaction to the season finale. So check us out on Sunday night.
So be sure you're subscribed here.
That's the best way. Yeah. So thank you, Brittany. So for Brittany, for Marcy, and for Tristan, this is Justin saying we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a good evening.